Hi, everybody. RivkaLeah here. We have another installment of From Darkness to Radiance, and we have a familiar face with us again tonight. We had Bob with us before, and he had so many great stories, and I had asked him to come back because there's so much more that I really feel that he can impart to all of us, and we can learn from and take away from. So I would love everybody to welcome back in Bob and show him some love. So welcome back, Bob. Thanks for being here again.
Oh, thanks for having me. I had such a great time last time, and I know we're going to have some great conversation here too.
Yes, we are.
So
You have some
this is
amazing
awesome.
stories and such a wealth of information that I just can't wait for you to share that with our audience. So I know last time we just had like a little sampling of everything going on. So you and I talked a little bit beforehand. So why don't you jump in with some of the stuff that you were telling me about?
Okay. So I just want to say, Darkness to Radiance is such a great. It's such a great title for your podcast, your efforts, your collective. Everything about this is just it's
Yeah,
it's there's so much that you can cover under that. I don't know if I
yeah,
mentioned that last time,
yeah.
but yeah, and Radiance is like, it's just, I think of a brilliant light just shining down and lighting up our life with just having some joy and being able to find our way along our path. That
Absolutely. I chose that name because for myself and a lot of the people that I work with, we've come through difficult situations, and it is a darkness. And now we're thriving and we want to pass that on to everybody else and show our radiance to other people and bring their radiance in so that there's all these little points of light for everybody to come to.
Well, that's great. So I guess I wanted to start off a little bit and talk about trauma and overcoming trauma and how like, and I've got some examples from my life and how trauma for one person might not be trauma for another person. It might be something else. It might be nothing at all. It might be it might be taken in a different light. So just I'm just thinking back to what I feel was probably one of the first traumatic experiences I had as a child. And I must have been, maybe 4 years old, living my grandparents' house in Hartford, Connecticut. And I had to go to the doctor with my brother. We had to get some shots. And that's no big deal. Getting a shot should not be a big deal. It's just a little prick in the arm. Um,
Well, it
what
can be
what
traumatic.
Well, it can. It depends on what happens, right? And so um, and so I I don't remember if it was my mother that brought me or my grandmother that brought me. To be quite honest, I remember my brother and I were there, and the doctor's in his white lab coat or whatever, and he gave us our shots, and he gave me my shot first, and that's okay. And he gave my brother his shot, and then he turned to me, and he had bent the needle with his finger, and he looked at me and said, "I must have hit the bone." And I'm 4 years old now, and I knew he couldn't have hit the bone. I mean, I kind of knew that he was teasing me. He was pulling my leg. This was a practical joke, but that stuck with me. And no matter how much I try to overcome that, it still manifests itself today. I've still got even though I know the needle is not going to hurt me, it's good. A shot is not going to hurt me. It's not that intellectually I understand that, but I believe that experience has caused me to have, like, in certain situations, panic attacks, like just getting blood draw, trying to give blood or something like that. And just, and I understand where it's coming from. I understand why it's a problem for me, but it's still been a problem for me all my life. And that one little thing, from early childhood, it was a practical joke. Okay. Not so practical. And let's take and dig into that a little deeper. So how else did that affect me? Well, now I have a model for practical jokes. Okay. And not a very good model,
Not
maybe.
a well, yeah.
Yeah,
Little
I don't
sadistic.
know. Okay. So when I think about that, and I think about, like, what is that, how has that affected me? And and how am I connecting the dots to these things? When I grew up, I was a terrible, I say terrible because I was a terrible practical joker. I would play a practical joke on anyone at their expense. And it took a long time for me to realize just how much I might be hurting people because of the things I do, the things I say, and the way that I'm approaching. It may be harmless. It may be nothing, So there are harmless practical jokes and there are harmful ones too.
But
And
words matter.
yeah, your word, yes, and what you say and how you say it can really affect other people, like, and so, when it comes to, having a laugh at someone's expense, is that really the right way to have a laugh or not? I don't know, and it depends on the circumstances. It depends on, what it is. But I've really learned that, just a single event, just a single word, the right way can turn someone's life around, and so can saying things the wrong way can turn someone's life around. So we really, and so out of that one little experience, I've got these two things. I've got this phobia thing, and then I've got this other thing that comes along with, like practical jokes, which may or may not be healthy. In a lot of cases, it's not. And so, and a lot of these things were not apparent to me, like growing up, going through life, and some of these things really haven't started to be on my consciousness till just the past few years or so. But the more I think about it, the more I go back and I dissect some of these things that have happened along my life. I realize that, there is a pattern and there are reasons for things, and that if we're careful and we're conscious of them, we can take those things that have been a problem for us and turn them around. And, and instead of being a liability, now they can become an asset in certain ways if we use them carefully.
So what type of things have you done to turn them around?
Well, I don't play practical jokes on people, at their expense. And I'm very careful about what I say and how I say things to people, because I understand that, there are people who've said things to me that have been devastating. And people have said things to me that have been very uplifting. And a lot of times, people don't realize the things that they might say just offhandedly, can have that kind of effect on people. Some of them have been very directed. And so, going back to something, a little later in life, when I was like, I must have been a junior in high school or something, my mother, and this is like, so I'm going to date this. This is 1973. And so I don't mean to be offensive, but I'm going to put it out there just the way my mother put it out to me. She, and like, I'm turning into a young adult, I'm going to be graduating high school. I'm going to move on with my life, and, my mother is trying to support me. She's trying to be encouraging. And she said to me, you know what? This is America. You're young, white, and male. You can do anything. Yeah.
That was the mindset at the time.
And if you, but today it's still, although, we've done everything we can to try to, to try to, create a society that is, that is open for everyone, and that, you're not, necessarily discriminated against because of who you are. Still today, we have, we have situations that that's not true. Where you have to work a lot harder if you're, a Black woman, for
In
example,
a different demographic, right?
to get ahead, right? I mean, I'm just saying, this is not. But what she said to me, and not to really harp on that too much, but what she said to me, I'm like, okay, I get that intellectually. I understand that. I understand that I have opportunity in this country to do anything I want. Nobody's holding me back. There's nothing in society that's going to, to hold me back. I just have to figure out what it is I want to do, and then put myself on a path to make that happen. Right. And so that was kind of an aha moment for me, that, she had that much confidence in me that she could make that kind of statement. And so that's another thing that's really stuck with me over the course of my life. So what have I done with it? Well, I'm not president of the United States, so I didn't get that one, even though I was born a U.S. citizen. But there are lots of other things that that you can do in life, and I feel very blessed because one of the things that I've always been, I think, good at is helping other people. And like when I was going through school, I would, like, help the other kids, tutor the other kids, and if they're having trouble, and they said, Bob, you should be a teacher. You should be a teacher. And I'm like, yeah, but teachers don't make any money. Like,
So you still
not
had the money mindset.
well, no, but I was thinking it wasn't really about making money at that point. And I think it was more about, yeah, but I want to do something. I mean, teaching is okay, right? And we need teachers, we need good teachers. But it wasn't something that I thought of as a career. But it's kind of always been there, and and that's kind of manifested itself in a lot of areas going forward. So and I'll get to that. Okay, I want to stay on the trauma.
Okay,
Just
and I will we've already, let everybody know that these are wonderful stories coming, so we're
okay,
gonna go from one into the other.
okay. So 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 I wanted to trauma versus adventure. When is one person's trauma another person's adventure?
Right.
And why would that happen? Okay, so this is my brother and I. We're only a year apart. I'm a year older than he is, and we had lived in the Bay Area for a while. Went lived from San Jose, moved to Berkeley, lived there for a while, and then in the end of sixth grade, my mom had a new boyfriend, and they were going to go up to the South Fork of the Yuba River, and camp out and live on the river for the whole summer. I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be a great adventure. I'm going to go, I'm going to go camping outdoors for the whole summer, and so the summer really went well, and we had a lot of fun. And my stepdad was the people he was working with had a claim for gold on the river. They could dredge for gold in the river, and so I learned how to dredge for gold and pan for gold, and do all that kind of stuff, which was kind of
That
neat.
now see, that is a legitimate adventure.
That is a real adventure. And so, and my brother thought that was an adventure, more or less. He didn't have any issues with that until school started. And then, now the schoolhouse was 4 miles up at the top of the neck. So we're down, we go up out of Nevada City, up to where we're at the top, down to the South Fork of the Yuba River. And then to get to the schoolhouse is you got to go 4 miles up to the next peak.
Oh.
before you can go down to the middle fork of the Yuba, and then there's a North Fork. But you see this.
Yeah,
So to get
that's
to
a
school,
distance. Yeah.
it's a 4-mile hike up the mountain to get to this one-room schoolhouse.
Right.
My brother wasn't buying this. He wasn't buying this at all. So that was about the first week. Then we found a place to live, which was an old broken down farmhouse with yeah, it's like no electricity, no running water, not even insulation. Wood stove. You want to get warm. There's
You're still
wood stove.
basically camping.
It's still basically camping, but in the winter at 3,000 feet elevation in the Sierra Nevadas.
Yeah.
Um, he was not happy about this, like at all. For him, this was completely traumatic. You took him away from his nice city dwelling house, apartment, whatever, with his TV
Mhm.
and, gas stove and, and hot bath and all of that. And you stick him in a shack in the woods in the cold all winter. And he's got to, and so the schoolhouse was actually, it was at the top of the mountain, right? And we're a 5-minute walk to school. So the walk is not an obstacle anymore. But I just thought this is the greatest adventure in the whole wide world. I got to, I'm in 7th grade. I can drive the pickup truck. I can use a chainsaw. I can shoot the rifles. I can do all this stuff. I can go. And he just didn't want any part of that. He just wanted to be gone. And it was so traumatic for him that he basically ran away to live with some other family up on the other side of the river, and I don't know, I think they were generous people, Seventh-day Adventists or whatever, I mean, they were like, oh, you poor boy, what is your family doing? We'll take you in, you can stay here. And so he ended up going off, and they sent him to go back to live with grandma and grandpa. And so he spent the rest of his childhood growing up with his grandparents in Connecticut, and then when they moved to Florida when my grandfather retired. So that whole experience set his life on a different trajectory. And I mean, I don't know I don't know how old he was when he finally reconciled with my mother, but I think he was probably, in his 50s. So
So,
so
yeah,
that's,
much
and
different experience.
right. But, and again, for me, it was just an adventure, right? I was having a lot of fun. I got to do all this stuff. I didn't mind the cold and the snow and and all the stuff, because I got to do all these other things. And who else has gone to a one-room schoolhouse in this day and age?
Exactly. You don't hear that very often.
No, no, it's closed now. It's now, but um, it's like this historic landmark site. You can go there. It's actually, um, I don't know. It's like an art center or something. It's like a community center. They've got a bunch of stuff,
Okay.
for that little community.
Well,
Anyway,
again, such a very it's so colorful, and the things that you have accomplished in your minimal years that you have here. I mean, did we not say we were 67 young?
yes,
That's
I just turned
old.
67 last
Yeah,
week. So.
you've accomplished a lot and have done a lot.
Yeah, I feel blessed that I've been able to do that. And so, but yeah, so anyway, that's just another example of one person's
So
life.
let me ask you this. So I know you said that, people had indicated that you would have been a great teacher when you were in that one room schoolhouse. Did you have opportunity to help? Because I'm assuming that it was multiple
It
grades.
was grades 1 through 8. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I
So
don't
were
know if
you
there's a kindergarten, but
you
yeah,
were
there was.
able to help some
Oh yeah,
younger.
yeah. Like I was reading to the younger grades. I mean, I would go off and
Okay.
yeah, I was reading to the younger grades there. Absolutely. Yeah. That was
And that what a
was
what a great start to prepare you for the future. knowing all of the different, levels of competency from, first grade all the way up to whatever grade you were in at that time, up to eighth grade.
I was in seventh at the time. Yeah.
Okay. So you got to see the whole progression, and that prepares you for the future when you're dealing with people in a whole bunch of different areas.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's interesting. So after and last time I talked about, getting, moving from, I found this great job in Silicon Valley, and I moved the family, and we got a motor home, and, and we moved there. And so that job at Linear Tech, I think I had that from 97 to 2004.
Okay.
And, and during that time, and I was getting, they had good profit sharing, we had employee stock purchase, and if you're, and they would also, for bonuses, you could get a stock grant or whatever. So I was able to start saving money and investing money, and, and they put money in your 401k,
Yep.
and so they, and that was the first time I actually had a 401k that I had, that I had more than what it took to put food on the table, and actually started to think about, what am I going to do for the future, and what do I have to do? So I really was like, I'm putting everything I can into whatever they would let me put into my investments is what I could put in there, right? And so I put that there, and and the market went up, and then the market crashed, and I had people talk about their $1 million kitchen, right? Well, what do they mean by their $1 million kitchen? Well, if they hadn't taken that money out of their stock investments to remodel their kitchen, they would have had $1 million if they left that,
Exactly.
and it's like, so you've got, but that whole bubble burst, and people lost a lot. And so at the end of that, I got a big head, and I thought, man, I can go off and I can be an investor on my own, right? And I'm like,
Oh,
oh yeah. So I cashed out. I wrote the CEO a nice letter, thanks for the opportunity, great working here. And I found a couple small companies, and I started working with them. But and I learned a lot in that year about what not to do. Okay, it was an expensive lesson, but I learned what not to do, and you know and it's something that I already knew from my first job, that a company is never going to grow any larger than the person who runs it, the CEO, can envision it to be. Right?
absolutely.
And I saw that this was happening. I saw this at my first job. I'm like, man, this CEO, he's lost his vision. I just couldn't work there. And so I left that job. I found another job. And then working with these couple of small, entrepreneurs, quote, okay, I'll give them that title, but neither of them had the vision. And because I was just an outside investor, they were not open to really, they liked my money, but
I was gonna say they liked the money, but they didn't like the input.
yeah. And it's like, what do you mean you call my distributor? You can't call my distributor. This isn't your company. I'm like, but we need to get, we need to expand. If you want your market to expand, we've got to do something about it. And it's like, and I'm like, oh my God, these are the wrong people. Anyway, so a year later, I've burned through all of my capital. They're not showing any profit. I'm living on my savings, and I'm like a month away from broke.
Right.
I'm like, well, I've got a little left in I've got whatever is in the 401k, but you can't touch that, right?
Right.
I mean, you could take a loan against it, but you can't,
No, there's too many penalties.
it's just, so, my all my stock stuff was like, I'm almost down to nothing. And I was literally 1 month away from broke. And I'm like, I have to do something. What am I going to do? Right. I'm belly up. So I took another job, and at the time I said, who am I going to work for? So I targeted the companies that I wanted to work for, and I wanted to work in a semiconductor company because that's where I'd come out of, and I wanted to work in that industry because I knew what their potential for growth is, and I knew how they fared in like the market, and in particular in the stock market as far as investments. They outperform, a lot of different areas, even when the rest of them, I mean, they're going to follow, but a more recent example with the last downturn, I had a bunch of money in company stock, and I had my fiduciary, my financial planner, that's another story, say, oh, you shouldn't keep all your money in your company stock. That's risky. You should take some out, and we can put it into managed funds for you and diversify that, and it'll
We
be a
want to
lot safer.
diversify you.
Well, okay, that was the absolute wrong thing to do. And my company stock dipped maybe 20%. And I had all the investments that this guy, my fiduciary, they dropped 50%.
Right.
And didn't recover.
And didn't recover. Mm-hmm.
And didn't recover. And if I look at them today, I have to force myself not to look at them anymore, because that's history. But I know that they haven't recovered, and I know I may as well just taken that money and just flushed it down the toilet.
I would say lit it on fire, threw it out the window.
And anyway, but that's fast forward till just a couple of years ago. Anyway, going back, so I had to do something. And so I said, I'm going to go, I'm looking at all the semiconductor companies, and I said, well, I'd really like to work for somebody close. So I started, like the companies that were right in my area, and like that didn't pan out. Okay, my go-to is some linear technology. I'm going to go to National Semiconductor because they were like the biggest analog and digital, but analog semiconductor company in the Silicon Valley area. In that, similar to what I had been doing at Linear Technology. And so, and that was really funny, because the guy that was my boss at Linear Tech had gone to work for National Semiconductor.
Oh.
And so I didn't know that at the time, but I applied for the job, and the guy I applied for in the other group, so he is in one group, and I found out the guy I used to work for is in this other group. And it turned out all I had to do was go through the motions, and I had the job, right? And I'm like, but not because he was my friend, because I had already had a track record, right? I had already done. It wasn't about that I just knew
what your capabilities were.
He knew that if he brought me in, he could count on me to do a particular job. And and it was funny because I don't know, things came to conspire against you sometimes. And I ended up, something happened. I was late for the interview. It's a whole day interview, and I'm late on the first getting there. And then by the time I get to 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm like brain dead. Lunch is weighing on me. I just want a nap, right? And so one of the guys asked me some technical questions. He asked me to derive something from a circuit, like right on the spot, without having any time to think about it. And I'm a little bit stuck, and I'm saying, you know what? I'm not going to be able to do it right now, but I'll take it home. I'll send you the answer. And he didn't want anything to do with that. If I couldn't do it now, then I wasn't worth talking to. So he gave me this big thumbs down, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm like, I knew it was coming, right? And so Craig, he calls me up, and of course he tells me, he says, yeah, you got the job, and and by the way, the guy that interviewed you, he'll be reporting to you. And it took quite a while for me to convince him that I actually knew what I was doing.
Well, or that you knew more than he did, because at that point he's probably thinking that, why are you here and why are you now my boss?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so that was kind of funny. And it would not in a, I don't mean, it's just a little twist of fate. But he didn't last that much longer. He called me up, one Monday morning, and, I'm in Santa Clara, California. He calls me up from Phoenix, Arizona. Yeah, I won't be coming back to work, ever. Like, okay, that problem solved.
Sometimes, these things do have a way of solving themselves.
Um, yeah, it was anyway. So things worked out just fine, and so one of the first assignments that I had to do, was training, and I had to create training material for a field applications engineer. I'm a power electronics engineer by trade, so I know a lot about that. And so creating, like, seminar material, online training classes, all that kind of stuff. So I spent a good amount of time the first, I don't know, year or two, doing all of that, and creating those online classes were really good. But then, creating seminar material, now I had to go speak in front of people, right?
Yeah.
And my
But this is
first
all
speak,
still building on you being a teacher too. See
it
how it's
is,
all connecting the dots. So you
it
weren't being
is,
a teacher per se,
right,
but you're
right.
using all of those same
I'm
skills.
right. So yeah, and so I had to go speak at whatever the hotel was. I don't know. It's the Biltmore Hotel in right off 101 in Santa Clara or something. Um, and like, and I get in there, and I'm like the first speaker, right? The first speaker. And I get in this conference room, and it's larger than any conference room I've ever seen. It just goes, and there are seats, they just keep going back and back and back. And not only are all the seats full, but there are people lined up against the back wall and on the sides. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And I thought I was prepared, and I thought I had a backup.
This is
I went
trial
up
by
on the
fire.
I went up on the stage, and I had a panic attack. And this is like, like getting stuck with a needle. Okay,
Uh-huh.
getting stuck with the IV. I'm like, I had that panic attack from being faced with this audience of people, and I had to walk off stage to and I was not able to complete the first session. Now, this is not good for being at a new job, and they've got this room full of people, and like I'm walking off stage because they didn't know what was going on. I don't think the audience really knew what was going on. And the next person to speak, I thought that he would have covered for me because he should have known the material. He was a coworker.
Right.
But what they did is they just cut it off and had him move on to the next topic. Um,
Yeah.
so, oh yeah, this
So
was
that left a
not.
gaping hole for people, so a traumatic experience.
Yeah, that was not so good. But I came out in the afternoon. I came out at my next, we had rotating speakers. I came
Sure.
out, right, and I went out there, and I had my time to gain my composure. I had water, well hydrated, and I went out there and I nailed it. So all was not lost. I was able to save face at the end for those that actually stuck around for the afternoon.
So did you
Um,
have any other techniques besides being well hydrated that you employed?
well, okay, so yeah, so I wanted to talk about that. So that's been a problem. So it's been a challenge for me to overcome that fear of public speaking, and no matter, like, so I can sit, if I can go at like an internal conference at work with people I know, material that's mine, that I've created, and I can just talk, like, I can just flow, and everything is good. I don't need to think about it because it's all my material. I've prepared it. These are people that I know, they're people I'm familiar with, and it's not this vast sea of strangers right out there. So I can do that, but like, but even, even years after that first experience, every once in a while, I would go to a seminar to do a session, and it didn't, and I was conscious of, I've got this issue. How am I going to deal with it? And and one time I think I was, I can't remember. I might have um, had to go to Toronto or something, or to go to, or wherever the heck it was. I don't know where it was. Some conference room in some hotel with a bunch of people, right? And and I'm and I'm and like, and it's not my material, right? I'm having to present other people's material, and that's part of the problem. Is how do you learn to present other people's material without just reading the notes or reading the slides or doing whatever, and make it your own? And like, I get up there and I start to feel, and I can feel this kind of panic attack thing coming on, and I'm like, oh my God, it can't be happening here now. Not now. I mean, I thought I got over that. And it's not a very big room, and there's not a whole lot of people, but just the content, it wasn't really mine to own. And I'm trying to work my way through it. And I just wasn't 100% comfortable. And like, I've got the mic on, that's clip on it's the wireless one. They clip on
Yeah.
you put the one on your belt and the one on
Yeah.
your lapel or whatever. And I'm like, I said, excuse me, I need to step out and get a drink of water. My throat is bothering me. I made an excuse to just get out of the room,
Sure.
but I didn't turn the mic off. At least I didn't have to use the restroom now. Okay. Didn't do that. I've heard of people doing that. And no, I was not going to do that. I went out, I got a glass of water. I came back in, and they let me know that I had forgotten to turn the mic off when I was getting my glass of water. You
Well,
know,
that's good. That's kind of breaks the ice a little bit, kind of maybe brings you down like, "Oh, okay."
right. Yeah, yeah, it does. It does. But yeah, but what I found is like, I just, y- so just finding a way to identify with your audience, and finding a way to, yeah, you need some icebreakers, and you know, telling a joke or telling a story, or just a little bit of something to get comfortable and break the ice. And that really does help to put everyone at ease, puts you at ease, puts the audience at ease. um, and it can be helpful. But um, the one thing that always eluded me, and was, how do I take, if I've got to present something, how do I take someone else's material and make it my own, so that I can actually be comfortable and confident, and really be able to excel at this experience. And worse than uh, live audiences is like just speaking to a camera with no one else in the room but you and the camera. And it's like,
That can be very
oh,
challenging because it's literally speaking to no one.
right. You don't have any feedback. There's nobody there. Um, and so I've had a lot of experience with doing seminars and public speaking, but a lot of things just eluded me for a very long time, a very long time. And then and one day, and this is not, it's not really, when you consider, I mean, my lifetime, in terms of my lifetime, it wasn't that long ago that I really learned to master how to prepare, um, for public speaking, and 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 how to own it. And I know this is going to sound kind of crazy, but it's through self-talk. And I don't know if you know what self-talk is, if
I
you've
do know what
used
self-talk is. I've actually talked about it on some of my lives, so
okay, okay, okay. And so, and no, I didn't, I heard about it, and I'm like, you're a book. No, I'm not going to read that book. No, I'm not going to watch that show. I understand what it is, but I just don't see, I just didn't see it. It didn't get it. It never got. And then a few years ago, I was making a bunch of changes in my life. And, I was going through my retirement planning and, what am I going to be doing and what's the next chapter of my life. And I found myself in the backyard pacing and thinking and talking. And okay, so now, okay, now we've got a big concern. Okay, Bob's talking to himself. What? Bob's talking to himself. Okay, we got a family history of schizophrenia. Oh no, it's not a good sign. And I had to explain to the other family members, no, it's my way of thinking and bringing
Your
things
process.
out and being able to process it. And what I found is that I could actually align myself and center myself. Pretty much, I learned a technique, and I know that I know that we recently learned another technique for aligning yourself and centering yourself
Yep.
by identifying with your inner spirit.
Yes.
And I didn't have that at the time, but I would just doing some deep breathing,
Yep.
standing, and just and going through, and a little ritual, focused, centered, balanced, and I can and just going through this set of breathing exercise, and just allowing your body to just be and just align and be able to, like I say, focus. When I'm able to focus myself, and all of a sudden it's as if there's, from down here and up, you can just feel a heightened set of awareness.
Yeah.
I could bring that on, and I could claim that. And then through self-talk, I can, go in the backyard, pace, talk, vet ideas, and go through like, I got an idea, right? And it's something that I want to incorporate into, this talk that I'm going to, or this paper that I'm going to write, or something that I'm going to do. I mean, it's not just for, I'm not just talking about using this for public speaking, but for any area in your life that you want to be able to focus and concentrate on, and just being able to come up with ideas and vet those ideas and voice those ideas out loud, and then take those and work on delivery, work on expression, work on what are my mannerisms, what are my cadence, what is my, how am I going to speak, and how am I going to convey my ideas, just through that. And I don't need the mirror to look into. Lots of people say use a mirror for self-talk. I mean, that's useful too, right? And
Right.
it is useful for, but so I've actually been able to incorporate that into just preparing for lots of things in life, not just speaking on stage,
This
which
is
I.
sort of sounds like a variation of a walking meditation that I've done, to get yourself out of your head, back into your heart so that you're centered. And that's when the ideas tend to flow a little bit more. At least for me, they do. So I get where, you say you're pacing, and I walk in a circle, and I kind of, I believe actually in California, I found it was like a Zen center or something where you could walk there. They had like a little maze that you could walk. It wasn't like a maze with like that you couldn't see over. It was just a path that you walked, and that they encouraged you to meditate and get all of that out. So it kind of, that's what you're describing. That's what it sounds like to me from what I have done.
Right. Yeah, sure. I'll agree. Yeah, and it's not something I read in a book or something it's just it's something I just discovered on my own. I mean, obviously, we are a product of our environment, and we
Right.
learn things, and things things happen, and then all of a sudden, every once in a while, you find that you have an aha moment and things just kind of fall together. And
Yeah.
so, I found that to be very useful. And so you mentioned Zen Center. So I read a book by Zen Cryer de Bruch, and the
Okay.
name of the book is called Your Inner GPS.
Oh,
And and interestingly enough, I bought the book. I bought an ebook. I bought the ebook a number of years ago, and I had it, and I started reading it, and I said, "Gosh, this is really interesting," but I just don't have time. I was so busy with other things that I never really read it and started applying it. And
mhm.
I said, "Well, she's got this seminar up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Maybe I should go for that seminar." And and then I forgot about it, and I'm sitting, in my library of ebooks, and I hadn't really got to it. And I go to start reading it, and I'm like, "Oh gosh." So she's not doing those live sessions anymore in Santa Cruz. You got to. I'm like, "Oh shoot, I missed that." Well, all right. So, but what's really interesting about this is that we are as people in life in the universe. We have things. There's always stimulus. We've got things going
Yep.
on. We interact with the world around us, and we are able to feel things that we're not always listening to our own bodies telling us what to do. And I don't know if you've ever like had like a tightening in the chest or
Yep.
this big feeling of dread in your stomach.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
usually that's accompanied by your thinking is not in alignment with reality, and what you're thinking is going to happen is probably not true. And if
Exactly.
you change your thinking, then you can find the right path for yourself. And it sounds a little hokey. I know it sounds a little hokey. This is often the spirituality realm, and I don't know. It doesn't, but quite honestly, I found everything that I read in this book to be true, and that if you can actually put some of those things into practice and incorporate them into your life, it can really help you to navigate through life if you're at least open to a little bit of a possibility outside of what your normal everyday
What
thinking would
I would
tell
say
you
what
to.
society tells you you're supposed to think.
Right. So, well, anyway, I thought that was a little a little a little neat.
I
So
love
I've
it.
been, yeah, and so that's something that I'm still working on. I mean, I haven't mastered that, right? There's a lot of meditation, there's a lot of but again, these things about bringing yourself in alignment and opening up your mind and being, allowing yourself to elevate, your consciousness to a point that these things all come together. And yeah,
And I believe everything is connected. So, and you say that you're still working on things. I say myself, I am a work in progress. I am never going to be like complete, right? Because you're always going to continue to learn. And this is why I really enjoy these podcasts and talking to so many different people, because I'm getting all these little tidbits from people and sparking new ideas like, oh, hey, maybe I should try that. That's really interesting. Or even places that people have talked about that they've lived. Like, wow, that sounds like a really cool place. I might want to visit there and see what that's all about. So, everything is connected. You're connected to other people that you don't even realize that you're connected to, and you learn from them. And what works for them may not work for you, but you might be able to take just a tiny little piece from it and make it your own. Just like you do with your store, your public speaking. You took somebody else's stuff and you made it your own. You found
right,
your flow in doing it.
right, yeah, absolutely.
I love
So,
it.
um, So I was just going to go back a little bit and try to bring things together. I know we're probably got a few minutes left, and
Yeah, absolutely.
um, but so so and I mentioned that a few years ago I went through retirement planning. I will probably never retire, and yes, I'm still working my day job, right? And but it's really funny. Um, I was So I have a friend, I should say a colleague, a work colleague who does, he's a ham radio shortwave, and he lives in Germany. He's like, oh yeah, you can if you tune in on shortwave, you'll be able to get me if you get the right antenna out there for your gear. I'm like, okay. So one Sunday I've got my shortwave radio out. I've got an antenna. I never was able to tune into him, but I picked up. I actually ended up on the AM band, and I got talk radio show from Sunday morning wherever I was, and so it kind of it I got through that radio show. I got connected to a retirement planner who and who also connected me to this fiduciary who I mentioned him before, and
Right.
there's nothing wrong with the guy. He's got a different perspective than I do these days. So,
Right.
but it was really interesting because I'm looking at like, okay, so what have I been doing? So since 2005, I took this job at National Semiconductor. They got bought out by Texas Instruments in
Mhm.
2011, and like I still have every paycheck. I've got money going into stock investments, and and then I got money going into 401k, and I'm like, okay. Um, but when I look at it, I'm like, compared to what I think I ought to have, it's like, this is, it's not, I mean, how much is enough? I mean, I don't know. What does your net worth have to be before you can say, okay, I'm there, I'm comfortable, I've arrived? But I start looking at this, and I'm like, this fiduciary said, you know what? He said, it's an honor. It's an honor to work with you. You've done more than most people
Right.
do in their lives. And I start getting these mailings from like, I don't know, like, these investment companies, and oh, you're in the top 1%, and you've done really great, and you should take your money and invest it with us. And I'm like, well, I get that this is marketing, but they're targeting me for a reason, and the reason is that I actually did save money over a long period of time, right? And I actually have, some investments, and I've got some retirement, and I've got something there, right? Rather than just, hoping, crossing my fingers and hoping Social Security is going to do it
Right.
for me, because it's obviously not, right? And that system's broken. Um, though I have put off filing, so I'm not going to file until until I get the maximum amount, because I'm planning to live. Yeah, I have forever goals for my physical health, right? And I never want to have a heart attack, and I never want COPD, and I mean, I've got a lot of what I don't want, and what I do want is to maintain my state of health, so that
Right.
I can live long enough to enjoy
All the
what I've.
fruits of your labor, as they say.
Yeah,
I think you're doing
but
pretty well, though. I mean, I saw how physically active you were at that seminar we were at and all the work that you put in, so I think you're doing pretty well.
oh yeah, I am not. Yeah, I'm not sitting on the couch eating bonbons or rocking. So I
That
love chocolate.
that's just a visual that I have of someone just, someone feeding them grapes or putting little bonbons in their mouth. I
Yeah,
always laugh when I hear that. Sorry.
yeah. So so anyway, so yeah, I mean, I still have my day job, and I'm working. I have a campground franchise that I took a franchise for a campground that I'm working on. I've got vacation or the house we bought my mom in Pennsylvania, I'm trying to turn that into a vacation rental to have for income generating property. Um, and and we own our houses. We own this house. We own that house. We don't have any mortgage on it. I mean, how many people can save up enough money to pay cash for a house?
Well, I
You
think
know, I
too,
mean,
I mean, everything that you're saying, everything that I've heard you talking about, you have taken the time to educate yourself. You have looked at everything as an adventure, used that, even if there was a point in your life where you were living paycheck to paycheck or you had used up a good majority of your savings, you were still forward thinking, knowing what you needed to do, doing the research to get there, and then applying it.
right. Yeah,
So that, and I know you and I talked about this, kind of off camera about being an entrepreneur, but that's what someone would define an entrepreneur as. Society would define that as an entrepreneur: doing your research, being forward thinking, applying it, and reaching those goals. Then once you get there, setting another goal and going forward. So, but this is just life experience right here
right.
in living color.
And I will tell you though, if I had made other choices, right? Like if I had taken the jumbo loan to and
Right,
to get the forever house, in the Bay Area, I would have tied me down and constrained me to such a point.
right,
You know, I mean, we rented cheap and saved our money and bought properties elsewhere.
right.
And that, because my wife said, I don't want to live here forever. I'm like, well, we should have probably bought a house there anyway. But I mean, there are a lot of things I could have done differently. But and there are a lot of times when even I was determined that no matter what, the money is going into my savings and investments, and it didn't matter what else was on the table. And so many, many months, I mean, I lived on discretionary income. What's that? You know,
Right.
I lived on the reward system. I mean, and my reward was I got to pay the bills at the end of the month and balance the books. That was my
Right.
reward. And occasionally, and I would have to dip into my stock investments and take a little bit out to make up the difference. But I would
Mhm.
rather do that than stop putting the money into stock. Why? Because number one, employee stock purchase, you get like a 15% advantage over it anyway.
Yeah.
So you're getting it at a discount. Number two, you hang on to it till it matures, and I'm not cashing in stuff that I just bought. So, you've got some tax advantage there. And so there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't matter if you don't think you can afford just, to put money into like an employee stock purchase plan, do it anyway.
Do it
It,
anyway. Because,
you gotta,
well, most of them, the first 3 to 6% is free money.
yeah, but it does take, it's money out of your paycheck that you're not going to get that pay
Right.
period. Right. And, you can't, and you have to wait that 6 months or whatever the period is, depending,
Right.
if you're going to be able to do something with that. But it's better to get in the habit of doing that, and and figuring out a way to make up the difference at the end of the month if you're short, rather
Right.
than not doing it at all. And
Exactly.
that's something that I am so thankful that I just always let it ride, always let it ride, just keep going, and we'll balance the books at the end of the
At the
month
end of
if
the
we need.
month.
So yeah, so but so, and then in addition to that, right, so I'm, and my next chapter, and I know I've got these two other business things going on, but I've got a digital marketing business that is which is basically me teaching, right? And so I've got courses I'm working on, that aren't ready for prime time yet, but they're in the works. So
Okay.
that's
All right.
anyway.
Well,
So that's
Dark
the
From
teacher part.
Darkness to Radiance does have a course out now. So
Okay,
you and I can talk off camera about teaching too.
that sounds great.
Well, I appreciate you coming in again and sharing all of your beautiful life story with us and all of your accomplishments. It has been colorful, it has been informative. And when your courses are ready, please let me know. And I am happy to let our audience know about them as well, because I think you are a fabulous teacher. And I'm glad that you were able to get over the anxiety of public speaking because you're wonderful at it. And I look forward to seeing more from you.
Well, thanks, Rivka. Appreciate it. Really love being here.
All right, great. I appreciate it too. I hope you have a wonderful evening. And thank you, everybody, for joining us in another installment. And I look forward to seeing everybody again soon. So, cheers, everybody.